actually for
Welcome everybody to Cannabis Review. I'm delighted to be joined by two of Ireland's pioneers in the cannabis industry and two of the loudest voices. It's great to be joined by Natalie O'Regan and Martin from Martin's World. How are you getting on, guys?
Excellent, very good.
All good.
Excellent. Thanks very much for joining me on today's show. I'm going to get started on a topic that we can kind of kick into that's been making a lot of the headlines at the moment. A lot of people already know who you are. Can you give us your overview on what's happened with the Little Collins reaction? Natalie, you're a lawyer, so do you want to give us exactly the breakdown of what you think has happened and why it's happened for the audience?
Well, I'm not a lawyer yet, but I'm on the road to becoming one. I'm studying and trying to qualify at the moment. But the cusp of what's happening with Little Collins is they are a CBD business in Galway and Kilkenny, and they sell a range of CBD products from butter to foodstuffs to oils to flour, all CBD and all permitted under EU law because they contain less than 0.2% THC. So in the last, I think May 2019 was their first raid, and they've gotten raided by the guards repeatedly since then, I think 4 or 5 times. And the issue up until recently was that Ireland has a zero tolerance policy to THC in our legislation. So regardless if it's CBD or not, whether it's EU permitted or not, Ireland's law is silent on THC. So any minute trace of THC in CBD products by default are illegal. So they've been targeted, they've been raided, they've had all their stocks taken off of them. JP currently has criminal proceedings against him due to this. So we had a recent Cannabis case in November 2020 from the EU. So the ECJ in that case stated that the member states cannot prohibit the marketing of CBD products that is lawfully produced in other member states in their member states. So Ireland cannot ban CBD products that are lawfully produced in another EU member state country. But unfortunately, our Misuse of Drugs Act hasn't been amended to reflect that yet. So we are now in a position where EU have legally permitted CBD products, but Ireland, because of our silence on THC content, CBD products are effectively illegal. So that is where we are today. So we are.
And what's the process for getting that amended?
They would have to amend the Misuse of Drugs Act. So in the Misuse of Drugs Act, it just says the cannabis sativa plant is illegal, and it's scheduled under their misuse of drugs schedule. So they would have to amend that to say either the cannabis plant is not illegal, which we would all love because it would bring in legalization, but failing that, they'd have to amend it to allow 0.2% THC. That opens up a whole can of worms. There's no path
forward to everybody.
Sorry?
There's no path forward at the moment for people to amend that for the audience to understand that we've now got the problem. Is there a solution that we can present to the audience as to, look, if we do X, Y, and Z, this is how we can amend this to have the 0.3% THC quantity allowed in there?
Well, it's just campaigning to the Minister for Justice and the Minister for Health and the Taoiseach and raising your voice loud enough so they'll have to hear you. Unfortunately, we're not getting very good responses from any of the departments at the moment. So you contact the Department of Justice and Helen McEntee will say it's the Department of Health issue. You contact Stephen Donnelly in the Department of Health, they'll say it's justice issue. You'll contact the Taoiseach and he will say, oh, I'm talking to Helen McEntee, the Minister of Justice, about this. But then again, Helen McEntee will say she has no idea, that it's not in her remit. Go back to Stephen Donnelly. So at the moment, you're just getting run around in circles from department to department with no satisfactory response. Like, even if they turned around and said, we're working on it,
yeah,
we'd accept a timeline. Like, we understand that these things do take time. They can't be changed overnight. It's not a click of the fingers action that can be taken. But at the moment, there is no willingness to engage from any governmental departments on this issue. And I think that is the crux of the story, is they're still raiding premises, they're still targeting CBD businesses, and they're still criminally prosecuting people for CBD. But at the same time, from where I'm sitting, it only seems to be certain businesses that are getting targeted. You're not seeing the likes of Holland and Barrett or Boots or anything like that who also stock CBD products. You're not seeing the same level of enforcement to those businesses as you would to the small local CBD shops in Ireland.
Okay. And Martin, are you hearing the same? We'd be hearing it as well, the deaf ears. You go to one department, you go to another department, and you just keep getting pushed from person to person. How are you coming across your interactions with the guards and members of politics so far?
Yeah, well, I've been campaigning for a long time. I aired some protests that we attended back in 2011 yesterday. That was from the 420 protest of 2011. And even back then, we were saying a lot of the similar things we were saying today. We had Luke Flanagan down at that event. We had Vincent Lavery. It was an amazing, very well attended event. But unfortunately, here we are today where we still don't have access to cannabis. We have a medical cannabis access program, but still nobody's gotten access through it. We have a few patients who have ministerial license, but that few isn't anywhere near the many who need access to it. So it seems like they're just, I don't know what, they're biding their times maybe to get things lined up so big industry can come in, and because it seems there's no interest there at all for allowing somebody like Little Collins, let's say, for setting up their business. They're coming down heavy on them. But meanwhile, the likes of GW Pharmaceuticals are being sold for 9 or 7.2 billion. And they're making massive deals. So on one hand, we're criminalizing people trying to set up industry here in our own Irish people. And meanwhile, we're kind of like applauding these other big, massive companies who are looking to sell into Ireland the same products we're criminalizing these other guys for. I don't know. I don't blame people for thinking there's a conspiracy out there to keep cannabis illegal. Because when you try to engage with the politicians and they don't take you seriously, they treat you, as Natalie very well pointed out, they start making you running around and chasing your tail effectively. You just have to think that there's something bigger at play, that they're not willing to play ball at all. Because this isn't an issue that we only brought up yesterday. As I said, that protest I aired yesterday was from 2011. And the campaign for cannabis legalization, I believe it started back in 1990 in Cork. So it's a sad situation here today that patients they're seeing people benefit from cannabis and they're not getting access to that cannabis themselves because of ignorance out there and unwillingness to engage in conversations around cannabis and cannabis as a medicine.
Yeah, I think it's a complete lack of understanding has put fear in them that nobody wants to put their neck on the chopping board. And to a degree, you can understand that. But at the end of the day, the politicians are there to serve the people. And enough of the people want a specific thing, then surely there's a workaround and a responsible solution that if you got the community together, everybody be able to put their 2 cents in and be able to come up with the most regulated and well-worked industry that we could all come up with. Because I think everybody agrees in this industry, nobody wants this anywhere near children. Nobody wants this anywhere near teenagers. This is an adult use product, as is alcohol, and it should be treated no differently. I think we'd all agree on that.
Yeah, I certainly agree with you.
Okay, perfect. I've got a question for you both now. Natalie, I'm going to let you go first. Timeline for legalization. What's your dream scenario and your kind of expectations of reality?
Martin's laughing because he already gave out to me for my comments on this before. Like, my dream is to have it legalized tomorrow. I have it legalized yesterday. Like, Ireland as a country are falling so far behind the rest of the world. We're being laughed at. Like, we are absolutely being laughed at globally by experts of just our draconian laws, our draconian approach. It is ridiculous. Like, Ireland as an agricultural economy have the perfect island and the perfect scenario to introduce cannabis legalization and have it homegrown and have an Irish industry of it. And Irish products are loved all over the world. And I'm sure cannabis and hemp won't be any different when the time comes. So I think realistically, I'd love to have it done tomorrow. That is my dream. But how long are we stuck with this government who aren't going to engage with us? And that's what I'll base my answer is on. How long are they going to be in government? How long before we actually have meaningful change and a meaningful government that are actually going to listen to the people and implement what we want implemented and implement what we need in this country and a way forward in this country?
Okay, Martin.
Yeah, I certainly don't think Natalie's wrong on what she's saying. I would agree with her that currently, as it stands, the way we look at the scene, I think we are looking at until the government changes. But what I'm hoping to do, I do see a way in which, like, if I didn't like the answer Natalie gave, as she said, and that was at the end of Gino's event, but I do believe that they're not wrong on what they're saying, but I do believe we can change that, we can speed it up, and it's the people can be the catalyst in it, and that's why I'm out there engaging in civil disobedience protests, because I don't want to give legitimacy to the law by respecting it. It's a law that disrespects me. It discriminates against me, and I don't want to give it legitimacy. And I don't think anybody out there all should be giving it legitimacy. I think we should be all marching down to the guard station, presenting ourselves, whether it be in kind of solidarity with Little Collins, or whether it be just in solidarity with the cannabis community at large. We don't deserve this treatment, and I think we could bring the system to a halt by people just showing up at the doors of a guard station together collectively and just saying, look, we're here, we're breaking this law, and go do your job now if you can at all. I believe if the whole community stood up and actually engaged in a meaningful way in this mass civil disobedience kind of campaign, the guys at the top would have no choice but to address the issues, because the people working on the floor, they wouldn't be able to keep up with the paperwork. They wouldn't even have enough room there to keep up with the sheer volume of paperwork that would have to go through the station to deal with what I would hope would be a very large campaign of civil disobedience. Like as it stands currently, there's about a 2-year backlog in the court system. So that's you have a right under your human rights, I believe, to an expedient trial. So if the backlog gets to 3 and 4 years, I believe again another breach of your human rights there, where you're not even getting your trial seen to in an expedient time. Because I do believe the Misuse and Drugs Act has violated our human rights in more ways than our constitutional rights, in more ways than one. And yeah, I think we have an opportunity now, really, just to take the system and bring it to a halt.
But I think, like with the Little Collins thing recently, like for many in the cannabis community, like Martin is doing this a lot longer than I am. It's the straw that broke the camel's back for many people. Like, enough is enough. Like, you're gone beyond targeting cannabis users and personal possession. Now, you're now targeting CBD. Like, it's getting a bit ridiculous now. And I think it is the straw that broke the camel's back for a lot of people. And if the pandemic... Sorry?
It's a pity that was the straw, because they're a business at the end of the day, and that they knew the risk that they were taking. But there's been patients up in front of judges before. I've reported on cancer patients who have been criminalized for growing cannabis, and the judge would completely dismiss all of their claims that they were growing it for medical reasons. And there was never an outpouring of support from the cannabis community for those people, unlike what Little Collins has got. And I commend the community for it. I think it's great, but I would love to see that reflected to each and every person who's brought to court for cannabis conviction, because we're all in this together. We're all being targeted by the same Misuse of Drugs Act, and it's discrimination, I believe, that it is.
Yeah, no, and I think Little Collins got the media behind it with the use of social media at the moment. Not every case gets to see the light of day, unfortunately, and some do slip through the cracks. I'm going to finish on one last topic, and I think it's something that it's worth highlighting. Our Irish cannabis community seems to be growing every week. Seems to be new young entrepreneurs, new educated voices, some current educated voices who've been doing this decades, who've been doing this a long time, again, like yourself, Martin. It's in a good, positive place at the moment. Would you agree? And second question, do you think we need a centralized database now to start gathering all the different businesses and different publications, so we can present this as create a jobs report, and maybe kind of try and present some financial data to the politicians and prove how much this industry is worth to the government?
Like, I think
well, to Natalie, sorry. No, ladies first.
I think all governments, what they're going to listen to the most is money.
Yeah.
They're not going to listen to sob stories. They're not going to listen to, oh, this poor fella, oh, that poor girl. They're not going to listen to any of that. What they're going to listen to is money, and money talks when you're talking to the government. And I think if you can present them with a realistic, workable situation, I think they will be a lot faster to listen than if you kind of like, oh, just turn up with sob stories, shall we say. No, they're not sob stories either, because they're valid people and they're important in their lives.
You can get immune to those though after a while if you're being ruthless. Like, you can get immune to the sob stories, as you were saying. It's about having a bit more depth behind that.
Yeah, and I think like you do have to, like, even in I've done a couple of tweets recently where they've confiscated X amount of cannabis, and I've said, right, 20%, basic 20% VAT. Look how much is going back to the revenue.
Yeah.
If you break it down that simple, I think they will actually listen. But I think at the same time, they're probably uninterested, and frankly, they probably couldn't be bothered. They don't want to do the work for themselves. They don't want to do the research. They don't want to actually see if cannabis legalization is a viable option. So I think it's on the shoulders of everybody else to turn around and present this to government.
Yeah, agree. Martin?
Yeah, I would agree with you there. Certainly that the cannabis community is growing in more ways than one. Certainly online, there's been more and more people stepping out of the shadows and becoming vocal around it. I wish they'd been more vocal all along, and were even louder in their support. People like Blind Boy, like he kind of came into this situation there recently. But again, I would love to see maybe somebody like Blind Boy engage in a civil disobedience protest if he believes that cannabis should be legalized so much, because put your money where your mouth is, like, kind of thing. But yeah, I definitely do think the cannabis community is getting a lot stronger. There's definitely moves being made by the activists now to try to form a centralized kind of movement to try to bring all of the different groups in under the one umbrella, in order to unify our voice, so we can be stronger, more efficient in being heard by the politicians. I think it's important that we're all pretty much saying the same things. And we can't really do that until we start having conversations together. So there is efforts there to bring the cannabis community together, not just south of the border, but north of the border too. It seems like there's an all-Ireland affair happening at the moment within the cannabis community, both north and south, even across the pond in the UK. It seems like the branches we're all growing together, so to speak.
Yeah, no, it is. It's excellent to see the industry grow as it is, and I hope that we can maybe do this once every 2 months or something like that. Get the three of us together and have one of the chats and give an update on the industry to the people. Because as much as we focus a lot on the business side of things, it's always great to have education and information available to everybody, and to be able to promote the issues like Little Collins and stick up with them when they do happen, and not be silent on it. So, thank you both very much for joining the show.
No problem, Rob. It's a pleasure.
No problem. Thanks for having us.
Yes. Have a great day, everybody, and we'll chat to you soon.